The other day we were talking about maybe we'll do this all next year. Can you imagine doing one of these for 365 days on the Book of Mormon? I'll bet we could do that. But I know it would take all her time. She does all the writing and the study and the research. You cannot imagine. She said to me, I can't figure out what this topic is here. So we talk about it. Well, guess what? It's day 16, December 16th. And the title of Christ is Living Water. The scripture is found in John 7:37 through 38. Jesus Christ stood and cried, saying, If any man thirst, let him come unto me and drink. He that believeth on me, as the scripture has said, out of his belly shall flow rivers of living water.
Yeah, this scripture has some unique background. The setting was the Feast of the Tabernacles. By Jewish law, they were commanded that 3 times a year all covenanted males were to appear before the Lord, first in the tabernacle in the desert and then in the temple in Jerusalem. They were to perform ceremonies and rituals which usually last a week. They were and still are, those 3 are the Feast of the Unleavened Bread.
That's Passover, right? That's a Passover.
One called the Feast of Weeks.
What's that one?
I'm not quite sure.
We'll have to study that one.
I didn't get a lot of information about it. I found some in the Bible dictionary, but wasn't much about it. But the other one was the Feast of the Tabernacles. So the Feast of the Tabernacles was the most joyful of all 3. It was and still is. They do still celebrate it. A 7-day celebration, but they added an 8th day on the end where they have a great day of feasting. It marks the ending not only of the Feast of Tabernacles, but it marks the ending of the whole festival season for that particular year. It's connected to the harvest, but it also commemorates the Exodus from Egypt. The Jewish people dwell in a sukkah for 7 days.
What in the heck is a sukkah? Like a suitcase? No, a sukkah.
No, it's a sukkah is a small booth that is made of natural plant material and like bamboo and branches. And there were 4 different kinds of branches and wood that they were to use. But if you'll read Leviticus 20,
that's where he talks about it, isn't it? In 23, he says, all native Israelites shall dwell in booths called sukkahs, that our generations may know that I made the people of Israel dwell in a sukkah when I brought them out of the land of Egypt, for I am the Lord their God.
So on the 7th day of the festivals of tabernacles is called the Hoshana Rabbah. Their prayers are said for rain, and in biblical days, it was accompanied by a ceremony. So the priests of the temple had big jugs of water from the pool of Shiloh.
Isn't that where Jesus healed the blind man?
Yeah, it was supposed to be the healing waters. Yeah, because they said that if the water is troubled, then the first person
gets healed. Yeah. Yep.
So they gather the water from the pool of Shiloh in these great big huge jugs. And the water is then poured over the altar, the top of the altar of the temple, and the water spreads out on the top of that altar, and then it pours down over the sides and onto the ground and around. And it's symbolic for the living waters from God, which flow from the altar of God unto the earth to quench the spiritual thirst of the faithful. It's a beautiful symbol.
That reminds me of the vision of Ezekiel, in which he prophesied that the day will come when water will flow from under the temple down into the valley, and everywhere the water flows, it will grow green and living and flourish in beauty. And if you look at many of the temples today, they have that example, that symbolic, especially the Jordan River Temple is very symbolic. So is the Provo, where the water flows, and then they have lush trees and greenery on both sides of the pool.
Yeah, it's the Provo temple that has those trees on either side of
Yes.
the temple that just goes out and you can overlook, and it's a beautiful
So does Jordan
symbolism.
River,
Yeah.
similar.
Well, we have a temple here. The temple in San Antonio has a font, it's kind of like an altar type thing with water coming over it, but then it goes
And then
over
it
the
flows
side.
down into a pool. It's a very
It's really
beautiful
pretty,
symbol.
Really pretty. We always look at that. We always look for because we remember that
Scripture in Ezekiel.
So we are always, the first thing we do whenever we go to a temple is look
We
for
stand and look at it. Anyway, at this period of time when Jesus Christ made this announcement, there were throngs and crowds of Jewish people around the temple. They were watching the priests carry the water in jugs toward the altar. And at this very point, about the time when they were going to pour the water on the altar and let it flow down, Jesus Christ stepped forward and cried loudly, "If any man will thirst, let him come unto me and drink." There couldn't have been a more dramatic setting for Jesus Christ to make this announcement. He was openly proclaiming that he was the Messiah and the Jehovah of the Old Testament who had promised to give the people living water.
Well, I'm sure some of the Jews there were kind of surprised, astonished at this proclamation. Some were probably ecstatic that he was verifying who he really was.
And
there
the
were-
leaders probably
they
were plotting to
probably-
murder him.
They were probably so enraged that they determined to carry out their plans to destroy this Jesus of Nazareth.
You know, our bodies are made to live on water. As well, our spiritual bodies are made to live on the spiritual water of God. And everything that Jesus did and everything that he taught was to provide our souls with food and drink that will last eternally.
I mean, he didn't want to just satisfy us. He wanted to invite us to share in his happiness and experience joy.
When I was a young teenager, my dad and I would go up Logan Canyon, and many times I'd go with my grandpa. And just before Bear Lake,
Grandpa Humphreys?
no,
or
Grandpa
Lowe?
Grandpa Lowe, and just before we got to Bear Lake, there was a little path that we could go up, and there was a incredibly beautiful spring, and you climbed up a little ways. You could drink out of that water. It was flowing all the time, and it was cool and just sweet tasting. It was
didn't know that.
amazing. Yeah, it really was amazing water. We'd always stop and get a drink. And then many times with Grandpa, that's where we'd go and hunt for arrowheads, and we'd take a sieve and we'd dig dirt and throw it into the sieve and let the water wash the dirt away, and arrowheads would be left below.
Great.
So a great
You
experience.
went to the source of the water?
We went
Where-
exactly to the source. It came right out of the ground. That's where we got our drink.
But did you bend down and slurp
We
it up
bent
with your
down and
mouth?
slurped it up. That's right.
You
And
didn't prepare by
and like-
bringing a cup, right?
well, sometimes we brought a cup, and like Gideon, we held our swords in the ready.
Why, weren't you supposed to be there?
No, I don't know whether we were or not, but we always kind of snuck in.
Well, Jesus extends an invitation to everyone to come and drink. He extends another invitation, as found in Matthew 25:23, to share in our Master's joy.
You know, that's a common thread. He invites us to come and drink, and he invites us to share all the time.
Don't keep it to ourselves, but share with others. So today, as we think about Christ's title, The Living Water, let us all think of some ways that we could come and take of the living water that he offers us.
It's day 16, and Jesus Christ is the living water. Notice our perfect water. See it? Oh, it is so good.
But the living water,
But the living water, that's even better.
Christ is.
Have a wonderful day. Bye.